Welcome to the Zone. In this edition of Stalker Storytime, we'll pick up where we left off in episode 1, just after the crash. I hope you all enjoy. If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's begin. Slowly opening his eyes to the bright light of the afternoon sun, Mikhail winced as he regained consciousness. He surveyed his surroundings as blurry shapes began to come into focus. His head throbbed with pain and his mouth was as dry as his last tour in Kazakhstan. Mikhail attempted to lift his hand to his head, trying to find some measure of comfort in his broken state, only to find that his wrists were tied together in front of him. As he laid on his back, he began to remember the mission that his team was selected to carry out. He began to come out of his dazed state, and he recalled the crash and the dogs. His comrades' bloody faces invaded his mind. His heart skipped a beat. Mikhail's blood grew cold as his mind's eye recalled the two figures walking towards him right before it all went black. Mikhail thrusted his body into an upright sitting position as he swung his feet off the rack. He looked down to see that his feet were bound by a ball of rope as well. His eyes darted around the room as more of his senses began to come back to him. It was an old storage room in what looked like to be some sort of office. Old filing cabinets lined the walls to his left, and to his right, shelves stacked with jars and sacks. The floor was rotted out, and the two windows in the room were broken. Jagged pieces of glass were scattered across the worn and rotten floorboards. He peered out the windows, attempting to get his bearings. As the wounded soldier looked out at the desolate and deserted landscape of the zone, he heard boots pounding against a hardwood floor just outside the door. Immediately, Mikhail sat upright with his back straight, waiting for his captors to enter the room. Bandits, most likely, Mikhail thought. But that's the best-case scenario in a place like this. He readied himself for interrogation at the hands of his mysterious hosts. The door to his makeshift cell creaked open, and through it walked his two captors. Dressed in older, military-style uniforms, the two stopped just feet from their prisoner and looked down at him. Mikhail began to take mental notes of his captors as he was trained to do. There were two, one male, the other female. The uniforms looked like something you would see as a child in the military parades from his town. The man wore an older Gorka suit. It was ragged and had obviously been repaired many times. It reminded him of the old television broadcasts from the soldiers in Afghanistan. On his hip, he had what appeared to be a Tokarev pistol. Judging by his tattered hair and his grizzled face, he appeared to be in his 40s. He had brown eyes, brown hair. There was nothing striking about this man, no tattoos or noticeable scars. The female was dressed in an older pattern of Flora winter uniform. She had on what appeared to be American Alice Web gear, and she had an SVD variant slung onto her back. The female had a medium-length blonde hair, blue eyes, and appeared to be in her early 20s. Again, no scars or visible tattoos. The two looked like they had been in the field for a while. They both looked tired and gaunt. "What is your name, soldier?" said the male as he interrupted Mikhail's mental inspection. He looked up at his captor, wondering what the proper protocol was in a situation like this. Unsure of who had captured him, he wasn't sure how to respond. "Sergeant Mikhail Oleski, sir. Why have I been imprisoned?" The man laughed at Oleski for a moment, and then squatted down face to face with his captive. "I'll ask the questions, boy. What were your orders?" "That's classified, sir." A rifle butt slammed in Mikhail's cheek. He spat out a tooth as he regained his composure. Looking up, he saw that the female had unslung her rifle and held it raised as if to strike again. "You military pricks have been killing us stalkers left and right for weeks now. What was your mission? To find and kill us?" the man said as he grabbed the sergeant by the shirt. "No, those weren't my orders," the sergeant said as he stared into his captor's fury-filled eyes. "Then what were they?" "I can't tell you," Mikhail tried to say as he fell back onto the rack. He could feel the blood from his nose running back up into his head. He sat up again as the man shook his hand in the air, allowing his knuckles to recover from the strike. The man squatting in front of him reached down slowly to his belt. He pulled out a combat knife and began to slowly wave it in front of Mikhail's face. "I'm going to cut you ear to ear if you don't tell me, you piece of shit." Oleski looked into the man's eyes as he swallowed some blood in his mouth. The captors looked serious. Even if they weren't regulars in the army, he could see that they had the discipline and the drive to follow through with their threats. They could be ex-military or possibly private sector. If he didn't give them something, he was a dead man. It didn't have to be much. Hell, it didn't even have to be true, he thought. "Okay," Mikhail said as he turned his head to spit a blob of blood and broken pieces of tooth. "My unit was tasked with escorting a scientist from Minsk. Our target's reactor number 4. Oleski stared at the man's eyes, waiting for a response. "For what purpose? Why the hell would the military send you there? It can't be done." "Well," Mikhail looked at the female holding the SVD. She looked eager to bash his face into a pulp. "If you tell your friend there not to knock out any more of my teeth, I'll tell you." The man looked over to his companion and nodded. She lowered her rifle and slung it back over her shoulder. "I'll wait outside," she said. "Let me know when I get to shoot this bastard in the face." She turned and walked out the room, slamming the door behind her. "Now what was it that you were planning on doing?" the man said as he stood up. He began to pace back and forth, playing with the tip of the knife in his hand. "The mission was to track the growth of the zone. After the last emission, the zone grew almost 20%. High Command wants to know if this will happen again and when." "And what of the military killing stalkers? What were your orders regarding non-combatants?" "I wasn't briefed on that. We weren't supposed to encounter anyone. As far as we knew, no one can live that close to the center of the zone. We were told that there wouldn't be any civilians past the cordon," Mikhail said. "You'd be right." The man walked towards Mikhail, knife in hand. He began to cut through the rope that held his prisoner's hands, then his feet. "There's only mutants and stalkers here. I'd like to think that I'm a decent judge of character. We saved your life. You owe us." Mikhail stood up and straightened his uniform. "What's your name?" Mikhail asked. The man motioned to Mikhail to follow him out of the room. "Misha. My name is Misha." The two men walked out of the room and into the hallway. The building was at one time some sort of office, but now was a dilapidated shell. The men walked down the hall and out a pair of main doors leading outside. Mikhail winced as he walked out into the fresh air, scanning his surroundings in a feeble attempt to figure out where he was taken. The land was completely overgrown, and nature had reclaimed this old building. A few hundred meters out, he could see old blocks and bricks piled up around what used to be the foundation of buildings. He thought to himself that this must have been a town of some sort at one time. Misha led his guest to a small fire pit where the female stalker sat, eagerly watching the two men coming her way as she clutched her rifle. She stood up. "Well?" she asked. "What was the verdict?" "Olga, those men weren't the ones that killed your brother. They're from outside the zone," Misha answered. Olga's eyes dimmed as she sat back down. "Damn it. Sergeant Oleski, this is Olga, my niece." Misha motioned to a log that had been turned into a makeshift stool. "Sit down and have something to eat. We have much to discuss." Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of this series. In the next episode, we'll see our friends hunt for artifacts near a snork den. Until then, as always, I'll see you in the zone.